Okay, guys, I am so excited for this podcast. I've been thinking about this. I meant to record this all day yesterday, but I was in a plane, and then so crazy thing. I was coming back from this conference in Nashville, which I've mentioned that I was at that. It was so good. And next episode, after this one, which I'm probably gonna record right away, but I'll probably release that one on Friday, will be about sneak peek. Tony Robbins. In my event, he talked a lot about, so he was the one that coached Conor McGregor through that victory at the UFC. If you ever saw the fight, I mean, didn't take very long. It was 40 seconds and he beat him. Anyways, he talks about that. He told us all this cool detail about it behind the scenes of what happened behind that fight. And then he linked it into a whole bunch of really cool stuff that I'm going to talk about on Friday, so don't miss that. Also, I have connected with a couple people that I'm going to be interviewing in this podcast. One of them in particular I'm super excited about. Her name is Erica Beck, and I will give you some more details on that. If any of you even know her, some of you might actually, if you live in the same area as me. I've known her for actually quite a while, but I started hearing her story. Guys, it is unreal. I'm so excited to share her story with you, and it's so powerful about the ability to, like, no matter what happens to you, how you can rise out of it. Anyways, some things coming up there that I'm so excited about. But today is about something that's been very profound for me. I had an enormous breakthrough actually. And that just happens, right? Like, we have breakthroughs, then we get hung up again, then we have breakthroughs, we get hung up again. And so this is a mix of two things. One of it was, I've been reading a book called The Untethered Soul. If you haven't read it, it's heavy, it's intense, and it is a spiritual journey, like, that'll kind of rock your world. But I recommend it. I haven't finished it yet, so I don't know the whole book yet, but I've gotten about probably 40% of the way through it. And it's been really, really impactful for me. So, let me go back to a story first here. So I'm at this conference. I was there pretty much alone, right? I showed up alone. Almost everyone there has been there before. They have connections. There's a handful of people like me that were kind of loners, but this is really vulnerable for me, so I'm going to be very open with you guys about something. So with me, when I get insecure, I go into this persona that's kind of hard, right? The more insecure that I am, this is the way that I should say that it was, because I'm choosing to change this about myself, but it's been a pattern in the past that when I'd get really insecure, I would just kind of lock up and I would choose not to feel, right? So I kind of just shut things off, and I'd hide behind this persona that was kind of like this intellectual, this I don't care what anyone else thinks about me, and I kind of hide behind that a lot, right? And underneath that, all of that, I did feel insecure and I did feel lonely, I did feel all these different things, but you would never know it, right? I'd just be like, oh yeah, I'm big and bad, and I'd play that persona, right? Because it was easier than it's kind of running away from the that pain. So I was at this conference. I'm surrounded by people that are just superpowers. I mean, I'm not joking. Like, I met so many millionaires. I met some people that made, I met this girl who I told you, was like super young. She made like 10 million last year, her business partners essentially made 10 million last year, just blew my socks off. And I was just like, man, like, everyone here is just way overachieving. I'm like a nobody here, right? And I just, like, there was a couple times where I just, like, my energy was kind of down. I'm just like, man, what am I going to do? And I felt discouraged, and people talking about all these great successes. And the first couple days, I was like, man, I just felt really kind of hung up about things. And as I did, I just kind of started locking up more, right? And so when I'd be around people, rather than engaging with them, being open, being vulnerable, and being authentic, I'd put on this facade, and I put on this face, and I recognized it. And the first day there, I was like, this is going to destroy me. Like, I felt like I was making progress, but when I was there, I was seeing it again. I was like, man, like, I just keep doing this. I keep on, like, hiding behind this mask, right? This persona that I want people to see, because I don't want them to see how insecure I am. I want them to see me as this big, confident, like, macho guy, right? And it just wasn't honest. And so I get back to the apartment that night, and I just really have this soul searching thing. And I've been doing this a lot lately, and I do this sometimes, but I just talk to myself out loud, right? I'm like, hey, Brunson, what's going on? What's going on right now? Like, what are you feeling right now? Why are you doing this? I know this whole thing, right? And I really, like, opened up to myself, and as I did, I really just started uncovering a lot of things. I'm like, where's this feeling coming from? And I'm like, I'm just afraid. I'm afraid of, like, I've always wanted, my whole life, I've always had this persona that I want people to see, and I've always wanted to be this certain kind of person. And I thought, well, if I can't actually be it, then I'll pretend to be it, and then often I'd lock up, and I realized a big thing that happened is I actually hurt a lot of my relationships, because if I'd be insecure in a relationship, I would lock up and I put on a mask. Rather than being open and vulnerable, I would just lock up, right? And And it makes sense, right? And every one of us do this. I don't think I'm the only person here that does this. I think this is actually very, very common, and everyone has a different way of handling it, right? But very often when we feel like and then of course life turns into a game of like us versus life, right? Life seems like the enemy. Life is dangerous. Life is painful. Life is hurting, because we lock up whenever bad things happen. So the thing that really struck me, this moment of clarity was, and I had this amazing discovery, and it was, I need to choose to be open. I need to choose to feel all these emotions rather than pushing them away because I'm afraid. Because that's what we do. When things in life don't make sense, when things disturb us, or when things are off or uncomfortable, we run away from them, right? Or we lock up and we put up a big wall. And what that is that life flows through us, right? Energy flows through us. Maybe this sounds hippie for you guys, but hear me out. We are creatures of vibration. We're creatures that are, we're very, very impacted by things we don't see. And you don't have to look very hard to see that. I've heard people say, no, that's not really true. Like, that people think they're rational, but I'm like, yeah, explain love then. Love is something you can't see that is so powerful and so profound and affects you in such a deep way. If you experience heartbreak, you know dang well that things you can't see and things that don't make sense can totally wreck your world. We're way more emotional than we are physical. We're so much more run by things that we don't see than things that we see. Anyways, I just thought I lost my train of thought on that. Oh man. Okay. So I'll just move on to kind of the next thought here. Maybe it'll come back to me. So this big breakthrough kind of came through accepting that life is going to hurt. Life is going to be uncomfortable. Life's going to be disturbing at times. Life's going to be, makes me insecure at times. And what it is that whenever we have something locking up, like we have this flow, right? Imagine your body's like a river, right? And life and energy kind of flow through it, and it energizes you. It refreshes you. But sometimes when we have these insecurities, it locks up a channel of that river. And rather than letting life kind of push through those barriers and all that junk that we cluttered up in there, we push back, and then it turns into this big fight, right? Life trying to flow through us, and we pushing it down, going, no, like that makes me uncomfortable. I feel weird. I feel awkward. I feel insecure. I can't do it. And so it's this big battle. And then what we do, we avoid situations that bring up that battle. So life naturally forces us to be authentic and vulnerable. It does. Like you cannot have good, meaningful relationships unless you're authentic and vulnerable, period. I've seen this so many times in my own life. Like if there's no such thing, you do not have a best friend where you guys both keep on this facade your entire life. It just doesn't, it's not a relationship that anybody wants. So what does life do? It forces us to be vulnerable. It forces us to show the soft side of ourselves. And if we fight it, A, we miss out on these amazing experiences, and B, we end up just running away. We're like, I can't be around people because people make me uncomfortable. No, I can't do this because it makes me uncomfortable. And we end up just running constantly away from life, and life becomes this great enemy who's always trying to hurt us and attack us, right? So what is the answer, right? I told you I had a breakthrough, and I'll tell you what happened. It was sitting there, I finally realized it was like, you know what? I just need to submit, and that's it. Just submit to these feelings and submit to this vulnerability. When I feel insecure, rather than running away or putting on a mask, I just kind of go, hey, okay. And I let all the emotions, I experience the emotions. Rather than fighting them, I accept, and I'm honest with myself. I say, okay, right now I'm insecure. Just buck up and face it, Brunson. Like, you're insecure. You're not perfect. You wish you were confident all the time, but sometimes you're not. And I'm a confident person. Like, people that meet me, you will know I'm a very confident person, but I'll tell you what, I have some massive insecurities. And I've often tried to bury those certain parts of my life because I didn't want to deal with it. It was too painful. It was too uncomfortable. And I thought, well, maybe I could just pretend my way out of this one. Maybe I'll put on this big facade. And then I was like, no, I'm just going to choose to embrace it, accept it, and let myself experience those emotions. Rather than running from or hiding from them, I'm just going to go, yep, I am feeling insecure right now. And that's okay. And I'm going to kind of ride this storm. And as I did, it was amazing, guys. So like I did that night. The next morning I came back, and every time I felt insecure, rather than either like acting like, I'm super busy and I'm gonna be on my phone here because I've got really important stuff to do, right? Because that's what we do sometimes, right? When we're insecure, we're in a group of people, we go, oh yeah, I got to check out my phone now. Yeah, I've got all these notifications popping up because I'm so popular. Like, right? That's kind of how we try to hide behind, I don't have any friends here, or I feel insecure in this room. I'm probably speaking for myself, but I do think there's a lot of people out there that maybe experience that same thing. That's why the phone is this great curse, or we act like we're really preoccupied with something very important. So Same thing happened. I'm feeling insecure, and I'm like, man, I just don't know anybody here. I don't have any friends. Like, I don't stand out, and I'm like, I'm a nobody here. And rather than pulling up my phone and acting like I was a somebody, like, oh yeah, I've got all this work to do, I just said, put the phone down. I walked to a bunch of people, and I made some amazing friends. Boom, like that. And I was open and honest. I was just like, hey, do you mind if I sit in here? I just don't really know anybody. And they were like, oh, absolutely, come on in. And like, it was such, and now, what if it happened opposite? What if they'd be like, excuse me, who are you? No, we're busy. It'd have been okay. Because I chose to be open. And yes, you do get hurt, but not nearly as bad as you get hurt running away from your problems. So, okay, then another thing happened. This happened yesterday, and it was the same thing. And for me, this was a great personal victory. So again, this is a little vulnerable, a little personal, but this is a big deal for me because I have a couple things in my life that I really want to heal from, and this is a big one. Is this retreating behind a mask whenever I feel insecure? I was with a group of friends, different age group, and I'm going, man, I don't know. Like, actually, they were all in high school, right? And I'm 24. Last time I was in high school was literally 8 years ago. 8 years ago is the last time I was ever in high school, right? So I'm sitting here going, oh man, I don't know how to deal with these people. And same thing happened by instinct. And this happens, right? By instinct, I retreated back into that. I'll just be that big, pardon my French, but kind of that badass, right? Like, yeah, I'll just be like, yeah, I'm pretty cool. I've got all this cool stuff going. You're just in high school. And I started to do that. And I was like, what on earth? No. It's okay that you're vulnerable around a bunch of high schoolers. That's okay. I don't know how to handle, I didn't know any of them. I was the only one in the group that didn't know everybody, right? I was the stranger in the group. And rather than trying to act like I was the know-it-all or this or that, or rather than putting on these masks or whatever else, I just said, you know what? I'm just going to deal with these emotions. I'm going to accept it. And I chose to feel, right? Rather than shoving the feelings down, I chose to feel. And as I chose to feel, it totally opened me up. And these people and these kids, same thing, they were intimidated by me, right? Because who am I? I'm this guy, and I carried myself like I was confident, and I usually do, right? And they were insecure. So rather than engaging with me, they're like, oh, we'll kind of have our own conversation, right? And me going, rather than engaging with them, I'm gonna have my own thing. I'll pull up my phone, Instead, I just opened up, and I was honest, and I was sincere, and I wasn't like, oh, hey guys, I feel very insecure now. But instead, I was just open. I didn't put on the mask. I just kind of said, hey, I joked around. I made a couple mistakes when I was with them. I was like, oh, dude, I'm such an idiot. Like, what do I do? Kind of just teasing with them, and it was super cool. Totally changed the energy around. And I was sincere with them. I didn't look at myself as, I'll try to be better than these guys. I was just like, hey, I'm just one of the guys, and for some people this is so obvious, but all of us have things that are not obvious, right? To me, certain things in business, I look at other people like, man, how do they don't get that? Like, that's crazy. On the flip end, things that are so obvious, a lot of you probably listening are going like, well, duh, like obviously you need to be open and vulnerable, but for me, this is not instinctive. It really isn't. And so learning these things have been so profound, and it's just this constant journey of being like, hey, I'm going to choose to be vulnerable over and over and over again. I'm going to choose to keep myself open. I'm going to choose not to lock up when I feel insecure. And I'm going to choose not to run away from people or situations that make me feel that insecurity. Rather, I'm going to just be open. I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to accept that I might get hurt. That's the big thing, is I accept that. That's what I had to really realize, is you probably will get hurt. I mean, in fact, it's guaranteed you're going to get hurt. You're going to have people who are going to shut you down because you're vulnerable. Because guess what? We live in a world of fake. Oh, and this is a little tangent. I'm super ADHD. You guys know this already. I'm writing an article about this, but that's going to be pretty spicy. So look forward to that, because it's going to be, I don't know, I think it might offend some people with it, but a lot of it is about public education, which, as you guys probably know, I do not support generally. There's some exceptions, but as a general rule, I do not support public education. I'm not a fan of colleges. I'm not a fan of high school. But a lot of that is because we are taught to be disingenuous. We are taught that if you are open and vulnerable and you show your true colors, that you will very often be rejected. And that's true. Now, the big thing is you see some people that are so open and vulnerable, and people surround them and they've got amazing friends. It's because they've learned to deal with themselves. They found peace inside themselves. They didn't need someone else to make them feel good about themselves. So as they're open and vulnerable, they're like, hey, if you don't like me, then get the heck out of here. I don't care. I don't need anyone to be happy but me. I don't need anyone to love me but myself. I don't need love from you to feel good about me. I have love for myself, and that's enough, right? And so that's kind of the belief there, is that as we're open and vulnerable, sometimes people who are not open and vulnerable as well will often actually act very uncomfortable around you, because it's like, whoa, he's showing a little too much color there, like he's showing a little bit too much of himself, and he's not fitting the cool norms, the socially acceptable cool norms, and especially in high school, they're a total joke. But by the way, I'm going to have that here. I'm getting on my soapbox. It is a joke, all right? High school is a joke. Like, we create these false politics, we create these false beliefs of what is normal, what's acceptable, what's cool even, and then you get into the real world and you find out that nobody cares, unless you're in the corporate ladder, and then they care. But nobody in like the real world of achievers cares about high school politics. It's like, what? Like, being able to like wear the right things, say the cool phrases, and like act like you're totally macho. Like, it only works in high school, and it only works in like the corporate ladder. But getting off that soapbox again, that's kind of the big takeaway for me. That was the big lesson. Was keep yourself open. So that's okay. I'm going to sum it all up right now. Choose to be vulnerable. Choose to stay open. Choose to not lock up, close up when things are uncomfortable. Find in yourself your own security. If you're really struggling, you're like, I just can't do it, try affirmations. I'm a huge believer in it. Next episode. Yeah, that's right. Next episode, I'm going to be talking about this, so make sure you tune into this. I'll be teaching you guys how I do my affirmations in a way that really helps them lock in. And I'm using the same techniques that people use for brainwashing, right? So tune into that. It's really cool, but yeah, it'll make sense when I explain it. So that's number 1, choose to be vulnerable. 2, don't lock up. 3, don't run away from things that make you uncomfortable. Life is not the enemy. It is not, and we think it is sometimes. We think it's us versus the world, and really life should just flow through us and we can't control anything but ourselves. That's all that we really have power over is how we choose to perceive the world. The world's going to go on its merry way, and it's not going to give two dangs about if you're having a bad day or a good day. Like, it just goes on its way, and we can either choose to fight against it and make it the enemy, or we can choose to flow with it and be like, yeah, I'm just going to make the very best of what goes on here. Yes, we do always strive for greater. Yes, we do make the best of it. Yes, we do fight to have a better life. But at the end of the day, life is just life. And the more we try to run away from things or fight them or whatever, we really just end up missing out on a lot of beautiful opportunities. So with that, guys, thanks for listening. Thank you for all the support. I've gotten so many awesome messages from people that have appreciated my podcasts. It has been so touching for me. I mean that very genuinely. Like, for me, it was a big step for me to make this podcast. Again, it's an insecurity, right? I didn't want to be open. I don't want to be vulnerable. I didn't want to talk about my life and my problems and my journey. I just want people to think, oh, he's already got it all figured out. I don't. And this is just my journey, and I'm so grateful for those that listen and support me. So with that, thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode.